Good afternoon, and welcome to a new episode of our program, The World Today. I'm Yasmin Bakir, and today we're going to be taking a look at the latest updates and the banners, the most important headlines on the national and international press. Very delighted to have joining me here in the studio to analyze more and take a more in-depth look at these articles is Dr. Mohammed Fouad, a political and economic expert. Thank you very much for joining us, Doctor. And I was pleased to start off with Al-Ahram Online, an article that reached Egypt's Minister of Defense, the Interior, agree on the improved strategies in Sinai. The article goes on talking about Egypt's defense and interior ministers who spoke of improving the common strategies to fighting criminal operations in Sinai during their visit to the security sites in the peninsula on Wednesday, and the defense minister General Sadi Subhi and the interior minister Magdi Abdel Ghaffar have stressed on the importance of maintaining the highest level of alertness and preparations. Now, this visit comes at a very crucial time, and we see both those ministers in charge of the security of and stability of the entire country visiting an important site. Now, what do you think the strategies and the measures that have been taken to implement security and stability in Egypt, how do you evaluate them so far?
I think the visit comes at a very crucial time, specifically that on Tuesday, the militant group State of Sinai has released a video threatening security personnel hours before the speech given by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. During this speech, speaking of those very security measures, the President has noted that throughout the month of April, 150 militant hideouts have been effectively destroyed, and the number of infiltration or the number of tunnels have been decreased to by 80 to 90%. One of the strategies also, which has been controversial but has proven to also have its merit, is the implementation of the 5-kilometer buffer zone, which has been completely evacuated by the armed forces, which led to the prevention of the infiltration of terrorists in or out of the peninsula. Also, during the same period, or during the period between the October 25th and 30th of April, according to the army spokesman, we're speaking about 725 deaths, which has been caused by terrorists.
Now, we see also the residents, the tribes of Sinai, taking part and playing a vital role in cooperating with the officials to find out or to target down those terrorists and try to clean out terrorism and terrorists from the Sinai Peninsula. How do you evaluate that gesture?
I think this is very true, specifically that they have been very vocal about this last Sunday when the North Sinai tribes, they have announced that their stance with the army last Sunday against the militant group. I think that gives a lot of hand to the fight against terrorism, specifically that the tribesmen of the Sinai Peninsula, they have a very good knowledge of the hideouts and the terrains and the activities on the ground.
Let's move to another article from the World Bulletin. We read, dozens killed in Darfur clashes. Now, the UN African Union mission in Darfur on Tuesday have confirmed that dozens of people have been killed in tribal clashes in the western Sudanese province. And that mission had also, the spokesman of this mission had said that at least 50 people were seriously injured in the clashes between Ma'alaya, if I pronounced that right, and other tribes in the east of the Darfur Strait. And the mission still remains gravely concerned about the continuation of the mobilization on both sides despite a temporary lull in the fighting. Now, briefly speaking, how do you see the conflict in Darfur? What do you think actually lies behind that conflict?
I think there's an inherent central government failure here to put an end to this saga of the violence, because what we're seeing is it's the same story repeating, where you have a violence between the bigger tribes, which is the Rizigate and the Malaya, and the attack has been perpetrated by the Rizigate near the stronghold of Abu Karinka, which has resulted in the death of over 100 people. So I think there's a strong failure on the part of the government to maintain the peace in the region, specifically that this does not come as a surprise. There has been a build-up which is leading to this particular action since May 9th. So it's been very visible that this catastrophe was in the making.
Yes, but who do you think is going to be able to resolve this conflict? I mean, you said this conflict's not the first time. It's been ongoing for quite some time, and the government has failed, or those entitled different sides are, failing to actually resolve the situation. Now, what do you think can be done to solve the crisis in Darfur, not without pinpointing on who should be blamed for the actions?
I think there was a start of something on May 9th before the problem happened, where the governor of East Darfur, Al Tayyib Abdul Karim, has announced that there's a joint committee which contains people from both sides to start resolving this. There's also the European diplomats have been extremely concerned. EU missions to the Sudanese capital, they called to stop this particular fighting. So there are a lot of people involved, but I think there needs to be more commitment to the actual peace process. There are also allegations coming from both sides saying that there is probably unfair play, specifically that a lot of the army, the official army, is manned by a lot of people from the Rizigate tribes, so they think there might be bias in the peacemaking process. So I think getting something on the ground from both sides by a joint committee is important, but also getting somebody to arbitrate from outside might be essential.
Okay, Dr. Mohammed, let's move forward with the Daily Star, and an article talks about Obama, who seeks to reassure the Gulf allies on Iran's security at the summit. And President Barack Obama is going to be seeking to convince the Gulf allies, including Saudi Arabia, on Thursday that the United States is committed to their security, despite their deep concerns among those Arab leaders about the U.S. efforts to broker a new nuclear Iran deal. And he will be meeting with representatives from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Oman, who are all members of the GCC Council, to discuss the security cooperation. Now, Bahrain's king is going to be attending, and we see King Salman not being there, and other people. Of course, while there have been a lot of analysis on the reasons why they're not attending, saying that this is a way to prove to the United States that we are against your policy and your backing and your change in strategy towards Iran, but the truth is not that. We know King Salman is, his health is not really going to help him to travel this long flight distance, especially that we know he does not like to stay, to spend the night outside Riyadh. We have also the UAE. He's also not feeling well. So it seems to be that health concerns are the reasons that are really constraining them, unless you have a different opinion. But what do you think is going to be actually reached out of this meeting?
I think the President Barack Obama will be in this particular summit at Camp David, will be confronting a group of countries which are assertively strengthening their own alliances as a counterweight to what they believe to be an Iranian threat. President Obama has invited the head of the Gulf State Council, the Union of the Oil-Rich Monarchies, in this summit, which has begun on Wednesday night. This particular formal U.S. GCC gathering to discuss the Iran matter has been long delayed. Let's say what we're seeing is a brewing Cold War, so to speak, which has been hiding. I think this summit is extremely important to bring all the worries. There's a particular fear which has forced those 6 nations to come together, although resolving a lot of the internal issues. I mean, you see Qatar is also part of this particular GCC visit, because according to the U.S. is thinking that this particular framework agreement which has been reached with Iran, they'll be trying to sell this particular agreement to the GCC countries, albeit that the GCC countries are thinking that the framework agreement would rather allow Iran to have a nuclear bomb rather than prevent Iran build a nuclear bomb. Also, Israel joins them in this particular opinion. And I think it's extremely important to have this particular discussion at the Camp David summit in order to get this.
Now, speaking of selling, I mean, how do you also see, the United States trying to sell off to the rest of the world, and highlight on the fact that, well, this seems to be very much of a Sunni-Shiite kind of war between the Gulf countries, and Saudi Arabia particularly, that is mainly Sunnis, and Iran, because they're Shiites, apart from any security threat